In the Amazon, the worst moment is not always the strike. Sometimes it is the moment after, when the prey is still alive, still aware, but no longer in control of the fight. A body can be pinned by spiked forelegs, trapped under a swarm, locked beneath a predator's weight, or chemically weakened before it has time to escape. That is when feeding begins. This is not simple hunting. This is the darker side of predation, where the victim is not fully dead, but already helpless enough to become food. In this episode, the Amazon becomes a feeding table, and the most terrifying predators are the ones that do not wait for the fight to be finished. In the green heat of the Amazon understory, danger does not always announce itself with fangs, venom, or speed. Sometimes it waits in plain sight, shaped almost exactly like the plants around it. A praying mantis can sit on a leaf, a twig, a mossy stem, or the torn edge of a broad tropical plant and look less like an animal than a misplaced piece of vegetation. Its body is narrow, angular, and still. Its forelegs fold beneath the head in that familiar posture that looks almost peaceful to human eyes, as if the insect is resting, watching, or praying. But that pose is not peaceful. It is a loaded trap. Those folded limbs are not decoration. They are weapons held under tension, built to open and close faster than most prey can understand what has happened. In a forest where movement gives away position, the mantis has evolved into a predator that wins by becoming almost impossible to notice until the final moment has already passed. The horror of the praying mantis is not that it kills with overwhelming force. It does not need to. Its strength is precision. On a wet leaf in the dim filtered light, a fly, moth, beetle, grasshopper, or smaller insect may move through the vegetation, searching for food, shelter, or a place to rest. The prey is not entering an obvious killing ground. There is no web stretched across the path, no hole in the ground, no warning pattern, no chase beginning from a distance. The mantis allows the prey to come close because distance is everything. Its large compound eyes track motion with remarkable accuracy, measuring tiny shifts in direction and range. The head can rotate with unsettling independence, giving the mantis a wide field of view without forcing the whole body to move and reveal itself. For an ambush predator, this matters. Every unnecessary movement is a confession. The mantis survives by staying silent, still, and visually broken into the background until the prey crosses the invisible line where reaction is no longer useful. Then the trap opens. The strike is not a dramatic lunge across open space. It is shorter, colder, and more efficient. The raptorial forelegs snap forward and close around the victim with rows of sharp spines that act like living hooks. The prey does not simply get grabbed, it gets locked into a cage made of limbs. This is where the title becomes physical. The animal is still alive, still capable of movement, still sending signals through its nervous system, but its options collapse instantly. Wings may beat, legs may kick. The body may twist with the panicked rhythm of an animal that has not yet accepted the end. But none of those movements matter if they cannot create escape. The mantis does not need venom to immobilize the victim because the grip itself becomes the paralysis. The forelegs remove space, leverage, and direction. They turn frantic movement into wasted movement. That is what makes the praying mantis so disturbing on camera. Many predators create a clean sequence that the mind can understand. Chase, catch, kill, eat. The mantis breaks that order. Feeding can begin while the prey is still struggling in the hold. Its mandibles start working with mechanical calm. cutting and chewing through the captured body while the victim remains pinned between the spined arms. There is no emotional hesitation, no theatrical rage, no messy overkill. The mantis behaves like a machine built by natural selection to solve one problem: secure food before food escapes. To the prey, the most terrifying part is not pain alone. It is the realization, if such a word can be used for an insect's final sensory storm, that movement no longer changes the outcome. The body can still fight, but the fight has been reduced to noise. This feeding style reveals something important about predation at small scales. In the insect world, speed and control often matter more than instant death. A predator that wastes time delivering a perfect killing blow may lose its meal to escape, interference, or another predator. A mantis does not need to end the prey first if it can hold it securely enough. That sounds brutal, but it is biologically logical. In a crowded rainforest, protein is hard-earned. A single insect meal may represent a meaningful return on hours of stillness. The mantis invests in patience, camouflage, sensory precision, and a capture system that gives it control immediately. Once the prey is pinned, the feeding begins because delay brings no advantage. The forest does not reward mercy. It rewards efficiency. The spines on the mantis forelegs are central to this design. They are not random jagged ornaments. They create friction, puncture points, and barriers against escape. When the forelegs fold back toward the body, prey is pressed into a tight zone near the mouth, exactly where the mantis needs it. This is why even prey with wings may fail. Flight is useless if the wings cannot open properly, or if the thorax is held at the wrong angle. Jumping is useless if the legs cannot push against anything. Twisting is useless if every turn drives the body deeper into the spines. The mantis turns the prey's own panic into part of the trap. The more violently the victim struggles, the more clearly the viewer sees the difference between movement and freedom. In the Amazon, this kind of predation fits into a larger world of concealment and sudden violence. The rainforest is not just a place of abundance. It is a place of constant interception. Leaves hide predators. Bark hides predators. Flowers hide predators. Even light and shadow become cover. A mantis may hunt from the edges of trails used by pollinating insects, or from leaves where smaller animals pass between feeding sites. Some mantises use green or brown body coloration that helps them disappear among living leaves or dead vegetation. Others rely on posture, swaying slightly with the movement of plants so that their bodies do not stand out as animal shapes. This is not magic. It is the slow sharpening of survival through countless failed and successful encounters. The individuals that weighted better, struck cleaner, and held tighter were more likely to feed, mature, and reproduce. There is also a strange intelligence in how a mantis seems to watch. It is not intelligence in the human sense, and pretending otherwise weakens the truth. The truth is better. The mantis is a nervous system tuned with frightening economy. Its eyes detect motion, distance, and contrast. Its body calculates through instinctive coordination. Its strike is guided by sensory timing so exact that the prey's small mistake becomes fatal. It does not need a plan. Evolution has written the plan into its limbs. That is why the animal feels so cold on screen. It is not angry. It is not cruel. It is worse than cruel. It is perfectly adapted. Once feeding begins, the mantis may start with accessible parts of the prey's body, using its mandibles to tear through soft tissue while maintaining the foreleg hold. The prey may continue to move for a time because insects do not die the way large mammals do. Their nervous systems are distributed differently. Their bodies can keep producing movement even after severe damage, and their small size changes the timeline of injury. For a viewer, this can look almost impossible, an animal being eaten while parts of it still resist. But that is the point. At this scale, death is not always a single moment. Sometimes it is a process, and the mantis has evolved to begin using the body before that process is complete. This is why the praying mantis belongs at the beginning of a video about feeding while prey is still trapped in the final seconds of the fight. It gives the audience the concept in its cleanest, most visible form. There is no hidden venom chemistry to explain first, no complex toxin pathway, no internal collapse that must be imagined beneath the skin. Everything is there in the open. The still hunter, the sudden strike, the spiked cage, the living prey, the feeding that begins before escape has fully stopped trying. The scene is small, but it carries the logic of the entire wild world. Survival does not always look like a dramatic battle between equals. Often, it looks like one animal controlling the only thing that matters before the other animal even knows the contest has begun. The mantis is beautiful, but that beauty is a trap for the human imagination. Its folded legs make it look composed. Its triangular head gives it an almost thoughtful expression. Its posture seems elegant. But under that elegance is one of nature's most direct lessons. Stillness can be a weapon, patience can be violence, and control can be more frightening than force. In the Amazon's layered green darkness, the praying mantis does not chase chaos. It waits for one careless movement, closes the distance in a fraction of a second, and turns a living body into food while the last signals of resistance are still firing. That is not just predation, that is the nightmare version of precision. In the Amazon, the smallest predators do not always arrive from the ground. They rise from the wet places, from the black edges of flooded forest pools, from hoofprints filled with rainwater, from quiet puddles caught between roots, from the still skin of oxbow lakes where floating leaves trap heat and decay. Mosquitoes emerge as a kind of living weather. Individually, they are almost nothing. A thin body, trembling wings, long legs, and a mouthpart so delicate it seems too small to matter. But that is the mistake. The mosquito does not need to look powerful because its power is not built for a single dramatic attack. It is built for repetition. It is built for patience, detection, and return. In a forest where the large predators make noise, leave tracks, and move through the world with visible force, mosquitoes turn the air itself into a feeding surface. A resting animal gives them exactly what they are waiting for. When a mammal slows down in the evening heat, when a bird settles into cover, when a reptile lies still near warm mud, when an injured animal stops moving with its usual rhythm, the forest reads that change. Mosquitoes read it too, but not with eyes in the way a larger predator might. They read breath, they read heat, they read moisture, they read the chemistry of skin, sweat, feathers, fur, and exposed tissue. Carbon dioxide drifting from a breathing body is one of the strongest signals in the insect world, and in the humid Amazon air, that invisible trail does not feel dramatic to the victim. It is just breathing, but to a mosquito, it is a direction. Every exhale becomes a marker, every patch of warmth becomes a target zone, every exposed surface becomes an invitation. This is where the horror becomes different from the mantis. The mantis creates a visible prison with its forelegs. Mosquitoes create a softer prison through exhaustion. The victim is not pinned in one place by a spiked grip. It is pinned by circumstance. Heat has already slowed it. Fatigue has already lowered its reactions. A wound, a fever, a long chase, a night without rest, or simple stillness can make the body easier to approach. A healthy animal can twitch skin, flick ears, slap a tail, shake feathers, shift position, dive underwater, move into wind, or hide inside thicker vegetation. But every defense costs energy. Mosquitoes do not need to defeat those defenses once. They only need to keep testing them until the body starts losing the argument. On camera, the feeding can look almost too small to be frightening. A mosquito lands lightly, balancing on thin legs, as if it barely belongs to the physical world. Then, the mouthparts begin their work. What people often call a bite is not really a bite in the heavy-jawed sense. The mosquito's proboscis is a specialized feeding tool, a bundle of fine structures that can pierce the skin, probe through tissue, and search for blood. It is not simply stabbing blindly, it is navigating. Beneath the surface, tiny vessels carry heat and pressure, and the mosquito's mouthparts work with disturbing delicacy to find access. Saliva helps keep the blood flowing and interferes with clotting long enough for feeding to continue. The wound is tiny, almost insulting in its scale, but the biology behind it is precise. This is not brute force, it is surgical theft. The Amazon makes that theft easier because the forest is built around moisture. Mosquitoes need water for the early stages of life, and tropical environments give them opportunities everywhere. A fallen palm frond can hold enough water. A tree hole can become a nursery. Flooded ground after rain can become a temporary breeding site. Even small pockets of trapped water can matter. This means mosquitoes are not just passing visitors in the ecosystem, they are woven into it. Their larvae live in water before the adults rise into the air, and that life cycle connects puddles, wetlands, animals, and blood into one system. The forest does not separate the ground from the air cleanly, it recycles danger through both. What makes mosquitoes especially disturbing in this chapter is that they attack when the victim's attention is already divided. A wounded animal does not only have to manage pain or blood loss, it has to manage the attention of the forest. The smell of injury can attract flies, stillness can attract ants. Weak movement can attract predators that notice opportunity. Mosquitoes add another layer, not as a spectacular killer, but as constant pressure. They land at the eyes, ears, legs, belly, muzzle, and any place where the skin is thinner or the defenses are weaker. One mosquito is an irritation. 10 become distraction. Dozens become a cloud of small decisions forced onto a body that may already be running out of energy. There is a cruelty in that scale. A jaguar attack is terrifying because it is decisive. A caiman strike is terrifying because it is sudden. A mosquito swarm is terrifying because it refuses to become one clean event. It keeps happening. The victim moves and they return. The victim shakes and they scatter for a moment, then settle again. The victim hides in shade, but the shade is damp. The victim rests near water, but water is where many of them began. In the Amazon, safety is rarely absolute. The same place that cools a body can breed the insects that read that body. The sensory world of a mosquito is one of the most important pieces of this story. These animals do not need intelligence in the way humans imagine it. They do not need strategy meetings, memory of one victim, or a plan. Their bodies are tuned to cues that large animals cannot turn off. Breath cannot simply stop. Heat cannot be hidden for long. Skin chemistry leaks information constantly. Some mosquitoes are drawn to certain odors more strongly than others, and different species may prefer different hosts or feeding times. That means the attack is not random noise, it is a biological filter system. The air is full of signals, and the mosquito's job is to sort them until one signal becomes worth landing on. For the prey, this turns weakness into exposure. A resting body produces a steady plume of carbon dioxide. A tired body may sweat, pant, or breathe harder. A wounded body may remain still longer than usual, not because it wants to be found, but because movement hurts or costs too much. Even sleeping becomes dangerous. Sleep is one of the most basic needs in the animal world, but in a rainforest, sleep is also a temporary surrender of awareness. Mosquitoes exploit that surrender without drama. They do not need to announce themselves. Their wing beat may be faint, their landing nearly silent, and the actual puncture can happen before the victim has fully registered the contact. And yet, mosquitoes are not villains in the ecosystem. That is the uncomfortable truth that makes the scene stronger, not weaker. They are food for fish, bats, birds, spiders, dragonflies, and other insects. Their larvae are part of aquatic food webs. Their adults move energy from one body to another, often at great risk to themselves. Many are swatted, eaten, drowned, or blown away before they ever feed. The forest does not create them as monsters. It creates them as participants in a system where every living thing must solve the problem of energy. Females of many mosquito species need blood not as a casual meal, but to develop eggs. The blood they steal helps produce the next generation. That does not make the scene gentle. It makes it more honest. The feeding is not evil. It is reproduction wearing the face of irritation. Still, from the victim's side, that honesty does not help. A tapir resting in thick vegetation, a monkey pausing on a branch, a bird pressed low in the leaves, or a small mammal hiding after a chase may all become temporary landscapes for feeding insects. Every landing demands response. The ear flicks, the skin twitches, the tail swings, the head jerks, the animal shifts its weight again and again. These movements may look minor, but they drain attention. An animal that cannot rest properly cannot recover properly. An animal constantly forced to defend its eyes, nostrils, wounds, and exposed skin is not fully resting at all. The mosquitoes are not freezing the prey like venom. They are fragmenting its focus. That is why they fit this title so well. The feeding is tiny, but the effect is larger than the wound. It turns vulnerability into a signal and stillness into a liability. In the Amazon, an animal does not have to be defeated before the feeding starts. Sometimes it only has to slow down. The body becomes easier to read. The air begins to fill with small wings. The first mosquito lands, then another, each one following the invisible map written by heat and breath. There is no single final strike, no cinematic impact, no dramatic body slam, just a living cloud finding the places where defense has thinned. The nightmare here is not size, it is persistence. Mosquitoes show that the forest does not only punish the weak through claws and teeth, it can punish through irritation, through blood loss in miniature, through sleeplessness, through disease risk, through the constant theft of attention. They are the reminder that survival is not only about escaping the predator big enough to see, it is also about enduring the ones small enough to become the atmosphere around you. In the Amazon, when a body stops moving well, the air notices, and once the air starts feeding, even rest can become another kind of trap. Fireflies are usually introduced to us as beauty. They appear in the mind as soft lights in warm darkness, tiny sparks drifting above grass, riverbanks and forest edges, like the night has learned to breathe. That image is real, but it is not the whole animal. Long before the adult firefly becomes a symbol of magic, courtship, and summer darkness, it begins life much closer to the ground, in a world that is wetter, colder, and far less romantic. Down in the Amazon's leaf litter, beneath fallen palm fragments, moss, rotting wood, and soil darkened by constant humidity, firefly larvae move through the hidden lower forest as predators. They are not floating lights yet. They are hunters in the damp layer where bodies soften quickly, where decay feeds roots and fungi, and where small animals disappear without any dramatic chase. This is the darker twist that makes them valuable in the story. The adult glow feels almost gentle from a distance, but the larval life is built around feeding. A firefly larva is often narrow, segmented, and armored compared with the soft-bodied prey it searches for. It may move slowly, but slowness does not make it harmless. In the lower forest, speed is not always the winning strategy. The ground is crowded with obstacles: curled leaves, slick bark, fungal threads, mud films, root hairs, and the collapsing architecture of dead plants. A fast predator can lose energy fighting the terrain. A slow predator can do something more efficient. It can search carefully, follow chemical traces, and attack prey that cannot escape quickly, even when danger has arrived. The prey here is not the kind that explodes into flight or vanishes in one leap. Snails, slugs, worms, and small, soft-bodied invertebrates live in the same wet spaces because moisture protects them from drying out. Their bodies are built around contact with damp surfaces. Their movement is steady, close to the ground, and dependent on mucus, muscle waves, and shelter. That makes them successful in a rainforest floor full of wet food, fungus, algae, and decomposing matter. But it also makes them vulnerable to predators that specialize in the slow world. A snail can retreat into a shell. A slug can contract and produce more slime. A small worm-like animal can twist into debris. But none of these defenses matter much if the predator's method is not brute force. Firefly larvae do not need to win a sprint. They need to find the soft target, hold contact, and begin the chemical work. The feeding can feel surgical because it is controlled and intimate. When a larva attacks a soft-bodied prey animal, it may use its mouthparts to deliver substances that help immobilize and break down the victim's tissues. This is where the horror becomes quiet. There is no thunderclap moment, no jaws snapping shut like a crocodile, no visible cloud of blood. The prey is processed from close range in the dark by an animal most viewers still associate with glowing beauty. That contrast matters. Nature often hides its most unsettling mechanics behind familiar images. The same life cycle that will later produce a blinking courtship signal can begin with a larva feeding in wet debris, turning another animal's body into usable nutrients, one hidden bite at a time. In the Amazon, the forest floor is already a place where boundaries blur. Dead leaves become soil. Fallen fruit becomes insect food. Insects become frog food. Fungi thread through wood and recycle trees into future growth. Everything is being broken down, absorbed, reused, and rebuilt. Firefly larvae belong to that system, but not as passive scavengers. They are active predators inside the recycling layer. Their hunting adds another pressure on the small animals that graze on fungi, algae, plant matter, and decay. A slug feeding in the wrong patch of moss is not just part of decomposition. It may become part of a predator's development. The larva takes energy from that soft body, and that energy later helps build the adult form. Wings, light organs, reproductive capacity, and the famous glow that humans notice only after the darker work has already been done. That glow, even in larval stages for some species, is not just decoration. Bioluminescence in fireflies comes from chemistry inside specialized cells, where luciferin reacts with oxygen through the action of luciferase, producing light with remarkable efficiency. In adults, flashing patterns are often tied to mating signals, with species using rhythm, timing, and color to recognize each other in darkness. But in larvae, glowing can serve a different message. It may warn predators that the larva is chemically defended or not worth eating. That means the light we admire can also function as a warning sign. The forest does not use beauty only for attraction. Sometimes beauty is a boundary. Sometimes a glow is not an invitation. It is a small green warning written in chemical language. This makes the larval firefly feel almost unfairly designed. It lives in darkness, hunts vulnerable prey, may use chemical assistance to subdue food, and may also carry a visual signal that discourages enemies. It is not the helpless beginning of a beautiful adult. It is already a working predator, already part of the forest's negotiations between hunger and defense. The viewer, who only knows fireflies as harmless floating lights, is forced to rethink the animal completely. The magic was never fake, but it was incomplete. Behind it is a life cycle shaped by the same rules that shape every predator in the rainforest. Find energy, survive being eaten, grow fast enough, and reproduce before the forest closes the opportunity. The lower Amazon is perfect for this kind of story because it is alive even when it looks still. A camera moving close to the ground would see dew collecting along leaf veins, tiny mites crossing fungal shelves, beetle larvae drilling through damp wood, ants inspecting dead matter, and snails leaving silver trails through the mud. Every surface is used by something. Every patch of darkness has traffic. Firefly larvae move through this miniature world with a patience that feels almost alien. They do not need to dominate the frame like a jaguar or a snake. Their power is hidden in scale. To a snail or slug, the larva is not small. It is a serious predator arriving in the only world that matters. There is also a brutal elegance in how the prey is selected. Soft bodies are easier to penetrate, easier to chemically overwhelm, and easier to consume than heavily armored insects. A predator that specializes in this kind of food does not need massive jaws. It needs the right tools for tissue, moisture, and hold. The damp environment helps keep both hunter and prey active, but it also makes the scene feel claustrophobic. Everything happens close to the ground, under cover, where visibility is poor, and escape paths are blocked by the same wet debris that keeps the prey alive. The slug's moisture-dependent body, so useful in one moment, becomes a weakness in the next. The snail's slow movement, usually protected by patience and shelter, becomes a liability when the predator can afford to take its time. And that is the emotional hook of this chapter. The firefly larva turns beauty inside out. It reminds us that an animal's most famous form is often only one chapter of its life. We love the adult light because we see it from above, at a comfortable distance, after the feeding years have already paid for it. But nature does not build light from nothing. It builds it from food, from predation, from chemical reactions powered by bodies taken in the dark. The glow that later drifts through the forest is not separate from the larva in the leaf litter. It is the result of it. So when the Amazon night begins to shine, the beauty is still real. The lights above the wet ground may still feel like sparks from another world. But now the image carries weight. Every small flash belongs to an animal with a hidden past, a predator that once moved through moss and rotting wood, searching for soft prey in the lower darkness. The firefly does not stop being beautiful because its larva is dangerous. It becomes more interesting, more complete, more honest. In the Amazon, even the gentlest light can begin as a feeding system, and sometimes the magic of the forest is built from something much colder than wonder. On the Amazon forest floor, there are moments when the ground seems to move before anything obvious has stepped into frame. At first, it looks like a dark stain spreading through the leaf litter, a restless black and brown current flowing around roots, over fallen branches, beneath curled leaves, and across the damp skin of the soil. Then the pattern sharpens. It is not mud, not shadow, not wind disturbing debris. It is army ants, thousands of bodies moving as one hunting front, turning the lower forest into a pressure wave. One ant is almost meaningless to a large animal. It can be shaken off, crushed, avoided, or ignored. But army ants do not ask the forest to fear one ant. They ask it to calculate what happens when there is no gap left between the first attacker and the next 100. This is why they turn helplessness into scale. A praying mantis wins by locking one victim in a precise grip. A mosquito wins by returning again and again to exposed skin. Army ants win by changing the entire shape of the battlefield. When a raid moves through the forest, every small animal in its path is forced to make a decision immediately. Stay hidden and risk being discovered, or run and risk exposing itself to birds, lizards, spiders, and other predators waiting for the panic. The raid does not simply hunt prey, it flushes the forest open. Cockroaches, beetles, crickets, spiders, scorpions, larvae, and other insects pour out of hiding places that were safe minutes earlier. The leaf litter becomes a collapsing city. What looked like shelter becomes a maze filling with teeth. The ants do not move with the drama of a single predator. There is no central monster, no visible leader, no one animal carrying the full threat. The danger is distributed. Each worker follows chemical trails, physical contact, and the movement of the group, adding its small decisions to a collective flow that becomes far more powerful than any individual ant could be. This is the real intelligence of the swarm. It does not need a brain in the center. It creates direction through thousands of tiny responses. A trail strengthens when more ants follow it. A struggling prey animal attracts more bodies. A gap in the raid closes because ants keep pouring into the space. The system keeps correcting itself, not because it understands the victim in a human way, but because the colony has evolved to turn simple signals into overwhelming force. For a trapped insect, that force is immediate. A beetle wedged beneath bark may survive many kinds of danger by staying still, using its armor, and waiting for the threat to pass. Against army ants, stillness can become a mistake. Ants probe cracks, enter cavities, climb over surfaces, and test every edge with antennae. Once one ant finds a vulnerable point, others arrive. The prey may kick, bite, twist, or press itself deeper into the shelter, but resistance becomes mathematics. One attacker can be removed, 10 can be fought for a moment. Hundreds change the meaning of defense. The victim is not facing a fight it can win by striking the right target. There is no right target. The swarm itself is the opponent. This is where the chapter becomes bigger than blood. The horror is not only that army ants can tear into prey, it is that they erase the usefulness of individual resistance. A wounded frog hidden in wet leaves, a slow lizard chilled by shade, or an exhausted small animal caught in the wrong place does not need to be instantly killed for the outcome to turn dark. It only needs to be unable to keep moving ahead of the raid. The swarm does not require one perfect bite to end the contest. It requires time, numbers, and contact from every side. Legs, mouthparts, antennae and bodies accumulate until the victim is no longer defending against attacks, but against coverage. The ants make escape into a losing equation. Every second spent struggling is another second for more ants to arrive. Army ants are especially terrifying because their feeding pressure is not random chaos. It is organized through the colony's needs. These raids are the engine that feeds a huge social organism, including larvae, workers, soldiers, and the queen. The prey taken from the forest floor is not just eaten by whichever ant finds it first. Pieces are carried back through living trails, moved along by workers, and redistributed into the colony. What looks like a carpet of violence is also a supply chain. The colony has no permanent nest in the familiar sense many people imagine. Some army ants form temporary living nests called bivouacs, made from the ants' own bodies linked together around the queen and developing young. Even rest becomes collective architecture. The colony is not just many insects living near each other. It is a mobile system that can shelter itself, hunt as a front, and relocate when the local ground has been stripped of opportunity. In the Amazon, that mobility matters. The forest floor is rich, but its prey is scattered, hidden, and constantly shifting. A stationary predator must wait for food to pass close enough. Army ants solve the problem by bringing the search to the prey. Their raids move through micro-habitats that larger predators barely notice. The underside of logs, the seams between leaves, the root tangles where insects hide from birds, the rotting wood where larvae feed unseen. They turn hidden abundance into exposed abundance. That is why other animals often shadow army ant swarms. Antbirds, for example, may follow raids to catch insects fleeing from the ants. The birds are not being commanded by the swarm, but they are reading the opportunity it creates. The ants become an ecological disturbance, a moving event that reorganizes who eats whom for as long as the raid passes through. The prey caught inside this event experiences the forest differently. A cricket that would normally rely on a sudden jump may find every landing zone already alive with ants. A spider that retreats into silk may discover that the raid flows through the structure from multiple points. A small frog can leap away once, maybe twice, but if it is injured, dehydrated, trapped by roots, or surrounded in dense litter, the swarm can keep pushing. Army ants are not unbeatable, and healthy larger animals can escape them. That honesty matters. But the animals that cannot move fast enough enter a different category. They become not prey of an ant, but prey of momentum. There is something emotionally ugly about that kind of predation because it feels impersonal. A mantis looks almost focused on its victim. A snake seems to commit its whole body to the strike. Army ants do not give that kind of image. They do not need to recognize the victim as special. They simply keep arriving. The body beneath them is still reacting. Legs jerking, skin twitching, muscles trying to push through the mass. But the swarm has already changed the rules. The contest is no longer about whether the victim has strength. It is about whether strength can last longer than numbers. Usually, that is a terrible bargain. The colony's success also reveals the deep power of cooperation in evolution. An individual army ant is fragile. It can dry out, be crushed, eaten, or lost. But the colony behaves almost like a larger animal assembled from small parts. Its trails act like arteries. Its workers act like cells. Its soldiers defend the flow. Its brood creates the reason for constant feeding. The raid is not just an attack. It is metabolism spread across the forest floor. The colony eats by moving, and it moves because it must eat. That loop gives the swarm its relentless feeling. It is not hunting for drama, it is maintaining a living machine. By the time the raid passes, the forest does not look destroyed from a distance. Leaves still hang. Roots still hold the soil. The air is still wet and green. But at ground level, something has changed. Shelters have been emptied. Hidden insects have vanished or fled. Other predators have fed on the escapees. Nutrients have been moved into the colony and will become larvae, workers, and future raids. The army ants leave behind the lesson of scale. In the Amazon, danger is not always the biggest mouth or the sharpest fang. Sometimes, danger is the moment when thousands of small bodies agree on the same direction. That is what makes army ants belong in this story. They show a version of helplessness that is not caused by venom, paralysis, or one decisive wound. It is caused by being overtaken. The prey is alive, still resisting, still trying to solve the problem with movement, but the problem has become too large for one body. The swarm turns panic into delay, delay into contact, and contact into consumption. In the green darkness of the Amazon floor, the nightmare is not one ant. The nightmare is realizing the front has reached you and the forest behind it is still coming. On the Amazon forest floor, the most unsettling attacks often begin too low for the eye to respect. The camera may be watching the obvious places first: the branch above, the waterline, the open trail, the dark hollow under a root, while the real danger is already moving through the leaf litter. A giant Scolopendra centipede does not enter the scene like a large predator trying to dominate space. It slides through it like a piece of the ground has become alive. Its long, segmented body flows between wet leaves, bark flakes, fallen fruit, rotting wood, and tangled roots, with a speed that feels wrong for something with so many legs. Every segment moves with its own rhythm, but the whole animal stays coordinated, low, and purposeful. It does not need height. It does not need a dramatic silhouette. It belongs to the dangerous layer of the rainforest where contact happens before recognition. That is what makes the giant centipede so ugly in the best possible documentary sense. It is not elegant predation, it is close-range control. A mantis pins with folded forelegs, army ants overwhelm with scale. The Scolopendra does something more violent and intimate. It turns its entire body into a gripping weapon. The first touch is not just a bite, it is a latch. Its forcipules, modified front limbs shaped into venom-injecting claws, swing into action near the head, seizing the prey and delivering venom at the same time. These are not jaws in the normal sense, and that makes the animal even stranger. The centipede's most important weapon is not simply its mouth. It is a pair of specialized limbs transformed into a venom apparatus, proof that evolution does not care whether a weapon looks familiar as long as it works. The prey may be a large insect, a spider, a small frog, a lizard, or some other animal moving through the damp lower world. It may be searching for food, shelter, or moisture. It may be using the leaf litter as cover, the same way countless small animals do every night. But cover is only safe when the predator outside cannot enter it. Scolopendra is built for the cracks. It can disappear under bark, flatten into dark seams, run through roots, and reappear at an angle the victim is not defending. The strike comes from the side, from below, from a fold in the forest floor. One moment the prey is moving through debris. The next, the debris has teeth. Once the centipede makes contact, the scene becomes chaotic fast. This is not the clean puncture of a single fang and retreat. The centipede stays with the victim. Its many legs grip, brace, and reposition. Its body curves around the struggling prey, not like a snake constricting with slow pressure, but like a living clamp constantly adjusting its hold. The prey kicks, twists, jerks, and tries to pull free, but the centipede can answer movement with movement. It can tighten one part of its body while another part searches for better leverage. It can keep the venomous forcipules anchored while its legs scrape for traction on leaf litter, bark, or skin. The result feels less like a bite and more like a seizure of control. The venom adds another layer to the trap. Scolopendra venom is not there for theater. It is a chemical toolkit designed to disrupt the victim quickly enough that physical restraint becomes easier. In small prey, venom can help overwhelm the nervous system, interfere with normal muscle function, intensify pain, and reduce the chance of escape. Pain matters because pain changes behavior. A prey animal that might otherwise choose the cleanest escape route can instead thrash blindly, wasting energy while the centipede maintains contact. Venom and grip work together. The toxin weakens coordination. The legs prevent distance. The forcipules keep the attack connected to the body. There is no clean gap where the prey gets to reset the fight. This combination is what makes the giant centipede feel so dirty compared with more cinematic predators. A big cat has a visible kill strategy. A snake has a recognizable strike and coil. A caiman has jaws the viewer understands instantly. The centipede is harder for the mind to organize. There are too many legs, too many points of contact, too many small movements happening at once. Its body does not present one obvious front and one obvious back in the way a mammal does. Even when the head is visible, the whole animal seems to be attacking. That visual confusion is part of the fear. The prey cannot simply defend against one mouth. It is dealing with a predator whose entire underside is involved in staying attached. At ground level, the Amazon makes this worse. The forest floor is not a clean stage. It is wet, broken, crowded, and full of hiding places. A frog trying to spring away may hit a leaf, slip on mud, or collide with roots. A beetle may wedge itself into debris, only to give the centipede more surfaces to brace against. A small lizard may twist its body, but twisting is less useful when the predator is already wrapped along its flank. The environment becomes part of the clamp. Leaves fold over the struggle. Bark fragments shift. Mud smears the bodies. The attack feels as if the forest floor itself has closed around the prey, because the centipede is using the floor exactly as it evolved to use it, as cover, traction, and ambush architecture. There is real biological brilliance under the ugliness. Each pair of legs helps the centipede read and control the surface beneath it. The antennae sweep ahead, sampling touch and chemical information in the dark. The body is flexible enough to turn sharply through clutter, but strong enough to hold prey once contact is made. A giant centipede does not need the open ground speed of a hunting mammal. It needs acceleration over short distances, the ability to strike from cover, and the confidence to remain attached when the prey fights back. That is a different kind of athleticism, one built for the lower forest, where the world is measured in centimeters, not horizons. The centipede's success also reveals why the rainforest floor is such a brutal testing ground for small animals. Down here, armor helps, but only until something finds a joint or soft underside. Speed helps, but only if there is open space to use it. Camouflage helps, but only before contact. Once Scolopendra is on the body, the problem changes completely. The prey is no longer trying to avoid detection. It is trying to remove an animal that has already become attached. That shift is enormous. Avoidance is cheap compared with escape. Escape requires strength, angle, traction, and time. The centipede attacks all four. For viewers, the disturbing part is how quickly the prey's struggle becomes part of the feeding process. A trapped insect may kick hard enough to shake leaves around it. A small frog may open its mouth, inflate its body, or push with its hind legs. A lizard may thrash and roll, but the centipede does not need the scene to be calm. It is designed for disorder. Its legs can re-grip. Its body can bend. Its venom can continue working while the fight becomes messier. The prey is still alive, still reacting, still trying to interpret what has happened. But the centipede has already crossed the most important threshold. It has made contact and kept it. That is why this predator belongs late in the video. It brings the theme back from scale to intimacy, but with more violence than the earlier chapters. Mosquitoes make weakness readable. Firefly larvae turn hidden softness into chemical feeding. Army ants show resistance collapsing under numbers. The Scolopendra centipede compresses all of that into one nasty close-range event. It finds weakness in darkness, attacks through contact, adds venom to restraint, and begins turning the victim's body into food before the fight looks fully finished. There is no clean boundary between attack and feeding. The process overlaps. The trap closes while the prey is still trying to understand the shape of the trap. And in the Amazon, that is often how death works at small scale. Not as a dramatic final moment, but as a loss of options. A body can still move and already be losing. It can still react and already be controlled. It can still fight and already be part of another animal's metabolism. The giant centipede makes that truth visible in the most physical way possible. It is not just a creature with venom. It is a moving clamp with a nervous system, a low-running predator built from segments, hooks, venom, and appetite. When it rises out of the leaves, the forest floor stops being background. It becomes the attacker. The Amazon night does not always move quickly. Sometimes it waits with weight. Beneath the broad leaves and buttress roots, where the soil stays damp and the air feels thick enough to touch, a tarantula can remain almost perfectly still at the mouth of a burrow, under a fallen branch, or beside a tunnel in the leaf litter. It does not need to patrol the forest like a restless hunter. Its power is not built around endless pursuit. It is built around patience, touch, pressure, and the terrible advantage of being ready when another animal comes close enough to make a mistake. In this lower world, where insects scrape through rotten wood and small frogs move between pockets of moisture, the tarantula is not just a spider. It is a trap with legs. What makes the tarantula such a strong closer is the heaviness of the attack. After mosquitoes, firefly larvae, army ants and centipedes, the tarantula brings the episode back to one body covering another body. The fear becomes intimate again. A smaller animal caught beneath a large tarantula is not simply bitten from a safe distance. It is pressed down, the spider's legs spread around it, bracing against bark, soil, moss or stone, while the body settles over the prey like a living lid. There is something deeply uncomfortable about that kind of predation because it removes space first. Before the victim fully understands the injury, it may already understand the pressure. The route upward is blocked. The route sideways is crowded with legs. The ground below offers no escape because the predator has turned its own weight into part of the cage. The strike begins with sensitivity, not brute force. A tarantula feels the world through vibration and contact. Fine hairs across its legs and body detect air movement, touch, and tremors passing through the ground or webbing. A cricket stepping through dry leaves, a beetle pushing against debris, a small frog shifting near a root, or a lizard brushing the edge of a hiding place can create information before it creates danger for itself. The spider does not need sharp eyesight like a bird of prey. It lives in a more physical language. The forest floor speaks through tiny impacts, and the tarantula is built to listen with its whole body. By the time the prey appears as a visible shape, the spider may already know something is there. When the tarantula moves, the change is sudden because it has saved its energy for the only movement that matters. The legs push forward, the body drops over the prey, and the fangs come down with direct, practical force. Tarantula fangs are not delicate needles. They are strong, downward striking tools designed to penetrate and hold. Venom enters the wound and begins weakening the prey from inside, but the venom is only part of the story. The spider is also physically controlling the animal. This is the ugly truth of close contact predation. Chemistry works better when the victim cannot get away. The fang placement matters. The braced legs matter. The spider's body weight matters. Together they turn a brief attack into a sustained hold. For the prey, the fight becomes smaller and smaller. At first, there may be violent movement. Legs kicking, wings scraping, a body twisting hard enough to shake the leaf litter around it. But every movement happens under the spider's frame. A trapped insect may try to push backward, only to meet another leg. A small frog may inflate, kick, or twist, but the tarantula can keep contact with the ground and adjust its grip. A lizard may thrash, but thrashing under weight is not the same as running. The prey is still alive, still sending signals through muscles and nerves, still trying to create distance. But distance is the one thing the tarantula has already stolen. That is why this scene feels worse than a clean strike. The victim is not only injured, it is covered. The feeding process in spiders adds another layer of discomfort because it does not follow the simple image of chewing prey apart like a mammal. Spiders feed largely by external digestion. Venom and digestive fluids help break down tissues, turning parts of the prey into a form the spider can draw in. The meal begins as a slow chemical conversion held at close range. That does not mean the scene is exaggerated or fantastical. It means the biology is colder than the myth. The tarantula is not tearing for drama. It is processing. The victim becomes food while still trapped in the same place where it was captured, beneath the animal that found it, pinned by the same legs that made escape impossible. This is why tarantulas have such emotional power in documentary storytelling. They do not need to look frantic. Their calm makes them worse. A large predator that shakes, slashes, and runs can feel chaotic. A tarantula feeding under a root feels final. The spider may pause, reposition, press down again, and continue with almost unbearable steadiness. That lack of hurry is not laziness. It is confidence created by control. Once the prey is pinned well enough, speed becomes less important. The spider has shifted the problem from catching to keeping. And in the Amazon, keeping hold of a meal can be just as important as catching it in the first place. The tarantula's body is built for that job. Its low stance gives it stability. Its legs distribute weight and grip uneven surfaces. Its hairs can serve sensory and defensive roles, with some New World tarantulas able to release irritating, urticating hairs when threatened. That defense matters because tarantulas are predators, but they are also prey. Birds, mammals, reptiles, wasps, and even other arthropods may threaten them. So the spider lives in a constant balance. powerful enough to dominate smaller animals at close range, vulnerable enough to avoid unnecessary risk. This is why ambush makes sense. A tarantula that wastes energy sprinting through open ground exposes itself. A tarantula that waits in the right place lets the forest deliver food to the edge of its reach. Its burrow or shelter becomes more than a hiding place. It becomes a hunting station, a retreat, a climate buffer, and a defensive structure. In a rainforest where temperature, moisture, and predation pressure shift through the day and night, the ability to stay hidden and emerge at the right moment is survival. The burrow keeps the spider from drying out, protects it from many enemies, and places it near the traffic of the forest floor. This is not passive living. It is strategic stillness, shaped by millions of years of animals learning that the shortest chase is the safest one. There is also a strange ecological honesty in the tarantula's role. It helps regulate populations of insects and other small animals, taking prey that might otherwise feed, breed, or become food for something else. It is part of the rainforest's constant transfer of energy. The cricket that eats plant matter, the beetle that works through decaying wood, the frog that feeds on smaller insects. Each can become a packet of energy moving into the spider. Later, the spider itself may feed another predator. Nothing in the Amazon stands outside the system for long. Even the most frightening hunters are temporary holders of nutrients. But none of that softens the scene when the attack happens. A small animal pinned beneath a tarantula is experiencing the forest at its most personal. There is no swarm front to outrun, no distant threat to avoid, no time to reinterpret the danger. The predator is already touching it. The weight is already there. The fangs are already placed. The venom is already working. The body may still react, but the range of possible futures is narrowing with every second. The tarantula does not need to kill first and feed later as two separate events. It only needs the prey helpless enough that feeding can begin safely. That is the final idea of the episode, and it is a brutal one. In the Amazon, death is not always a clean line. Sometimes it is a process that starts while the body is still fighting. The mantis showed control through grip. Mosquitoes showed weakness becoming a signal. Firefly larvae showed chemical feeding hidden beneath beauty. Army ants showed resistance collapsing under numbers. The Scolopendra centipede showed venom and restraint arriving in one ugly burst. The tarantula brings all of that into a slow, heavy close. It is the predator as pressure, the meal as a body held in place, the forest floor as a room with no exit. And when the camera pulls back, the Amazon remains beautiful. The leaves still shine with moisture. Night insects still call from the darkness. Roots still hold the black soil together. Somewhere above, fireflies may flash softly between the trees, but down below, under the leaves, beauty has teeth, weight, venom, and patience. The tarantula reminds us that the rainforest does not need to be loud to be merciless. Sometimes the most frightening thing in the dark is not the animal that chases forever. It is the one that waits, gets close once, and makes sure the prey never gets enough space to matter again.